the last 2 years, I've just watched another family or a film about a murder and a murder trial, and how was I going to cope? Just utter sadness. A mum will always look after their child's, protect their child, and a bereaved mum will always look after their child's memory.
Hello, my name's Charlie, the founder of Livedinsights, and welcome to the Livedinsights podcast. We're going to be having conversations with many different people on many different topics to get their insights, their experiences, their knowledge, their wisdom to help other people. Please tell friends, tell family, tell colleagues, and without further ado, let's crack on with this episode. Today's episode is on the topic of bereavement. My guest today is Carolyn, and we're going to have a conversation using the conversation cards here. Thank you for joining us today, Carolyn.
Thank you.
Bereavement will always be difficult, and everybody's experience is different. And in your case, I guess it's a more extreme example of bereavement because tragically your youngest son was killed back in 2022 in an incident while he was at University of Manchester, which involved a stabbing. Now, I don't want to go into too much detail about that, but in terms of the bereavement, the grief, the situation you found yourself in completely out of the blue, can you just explain to us initially how you reacted and how you dealt with those first few days, those first few weeks?
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, I think initially it was just absolute shock. My eldest son had to tell us the news, and we were driving at the time to Manchester because we knew it was serious. But it was just absolute shock, and I felt it physically. I started being sick, vomiting, just gone into panic, absolutely heart racing. So it was those physical signs of shock, as well as just almost trying to deny it, thinking I'm going to put the phone down and someone's going to ring and say it was an accident, it was a mistake. So those were also going through my mind, that it hadn't really happened. And trying to negotiate, almost renegotiate, like, no, this hasn't happened. And then numb, just this numbness around me. Especially when we had arrived at the hospital, just this, I can't believe, I don't know whether it's your body's way of coping, but you feel as though you're then an outer body experience. I remember looking down at me and Luke's dad at the time and from afar. So I think that's probably maybe a coping mechanism in having to deal with that situation. But they were the original emotions to deal with. And then over the days, it was just absolutely bereft that I've lost my third boy. How was I going to cope? Just utter sadness at it all, and obviously the circumstances around it.
Was there a sense that it was still unreal? Totally.
And even 2 years later, I will still say, I still can't get my head around that has happened to our family, that we are a victim of a violent crime and we've had to live through a murder trial and things like that. I still cannot believe. And again, I think it's almost out of body, as though I've watched a video or a film to somewhat watching another family living that experience. It's weird. It's actually quite bizarre how we deal with it. So just sadness, again, is very, very much part of today still.
And going back to those first few days, first few weeks, how did you get through it?
I took each day as it came. My partner, Andy, was absolutely fantastic. Absolutely. Even though he was obviously shocked, he managed and was the greatest support. But I just was literally taking every moment as it came. And I kind of knew that it was okay if I didn't even get out of bed, that was okay. I was quite aware of that. So I think I didn't give myself any expectations. I just took every second of each day as it was. And it's a roller coaster. but yeah, I don't know how I got through, looking at the funeral and things like that. Again, it's an out of body experience that I think, gosh, we did that. And we managed it at that time. But
because you couldn't have ever imagined this would happen. So
not at all, no.
you can't prepare for that
No.
in any way. So you basically had no expectations and you just had to get through it.
Absolutely.
And you've got no choice, I guess. You just have to do whatever
Absolutely.
comes to you.
That's it, absolutely.
Okay. And what support, other than you mentioned your partner, presumably the other boys, what other support did you have that was helpful?
So we had friends and family that the friends and neighbours I always recall in those early days where I was just struggling getting out of bed. More practical help, like walking the dog and bringing food parcels to make sure. Obviously I didn't want to eat, my appetite had gone, but within people just dropping like lasagnas and food off at the door was just very heartwarming. It was just so lovely that the community had come together to sort of support our family, really.
So presumably a lot of people found out quite quickly. So
it was, yeah.
Okay. And naturally they wanted to support and help.
Absolutely.
Were there things that people did or didn't do that were unhelpful during that time that you can sort of think about?
I think overall, everyone was just so... They didn't know what to do. It was such a shock to everybody. That wouldn't happen in the community where we live. It was just so... Everyone was shocked and no one knew really what to say. So they didn't say, they just, we're here if you need us, send in love. I think the helpful things, I got so many cards that people were remembering Luke and what he meant to them. And that for a grieving mum was,
That's all right.
Was very, very personal, and it was just beautiful to hear their memories and talk about Luke and what they meant to him. And that has, even to the today, I still get memory, like they're saying, "Oh, Luke would love this" and everything, and to hear his name.
But I think a big part of Lived Insights is having people sharing their experiences, so that others, family members, friends, colleagues, are a better place to support and do the right thing, the helpful things, the practical things, or not do the things that aren't going to help. And so you saying that in terms of the practical things, walking the dogs, bringing you food, and in your case, talking about Luke and the memories you found really helpful.
Yes.
And I guess some people wouldn't know that.
Absolutely.
So,
no.
Okay. What other things can you remember, that were helpful that time to help you get through that? Because, for most people it'd be unimaginable, but sadly these things do happen. So
They do. So within our village where we live, there was another bereaved mum who lost her young daughter, totally different circumstances. She was 5, but she was messaging. She reached out to me, and her advice to me will stick with me, and it sticks to me today. That grief, child loss, is like riding a wave. You're on a surfboard, you're bobbing around. May get some waves that may wobble you a bit. You try and stay on. Then maybe out the blue, this massive wave comes and knocks you off flying, and you sort of go under the water. And I cannot say how helpful that was. And those waves, those big waves, almost kept me under that water, maybe for days in those initial days. And then I came up for breath, got back on that surfboard, and I always kept thinking, I'm going to get back on the surfboard. And even now, I still have those little waves. Maybe I'm out the water a little bit quicker than days.
But even something as sounds so simple as an analogy around the waves and on surfboard, you just said it, it had such a good effect in your circumstances, which would anyone else going through similar, many of those would relate to it and it would resonate with, which would be helpful. So these sorts of nuggets of information are so valuable. Again, going back to the early days of what happened, the practical things like a funeral, etc. How did you deal with that situation, and what support or help did you get around that?
Well, the bank, Luke wasn't, obviously he was only 19, so I think he had uni debts more than anything, but the university were really helpful and the bank were helpful. Practical there, I feel as though I probably just went through, I didn't think things through. I think in hindsight, I might have changed a few things around the funeral. I was exhausted, still in shock, and I probably, just things down to the flowers and things like that. I just didn't know. I did not know. And part of me maybe didn't even want to be doing that because I shouldn't have had to do that. Yeah. So that was all tricky. But friends sort of rallied in and helped, and again, the local community, and we got through it. But it's hard, those making decisions that are just thrown on you.
So I guess there's some things that almost you have to do.
Exactly. You had to do it, and it was almost, those flowers are fine, because I didn't have the energy to really think about what I really wanted.
Okay, that makes sense. So if something happened to someone similar in a situation, would that potentially be something you would?
Absolutely.
So okay.
To change,
yeah,
I would have changed that.
Yeah.
Some of the finer details.
Yeah. Okay, and in terms of additional support, other than friends and family, did you access additional support? Was it made available to you?
Yeah. The way Luke was stolen from us, we weren't signposted to them. Actually, they called us Victim Support. Fantastic charity that I don't think I'd even heard of before we lost Luke. We had a family worker, caseworker, that rang me as much as I wanted to in those early days. At the beginning, it was every day, more of a shoulder to listen to all the emotions, to talk about anything or everything, or just to be there to hear me cry almost. And then as time went on, it was down to weekly calls. They were amazing in those early days.
And how long did that support carry on for?
It can carry on for it to this day. I could still seek that support, but I haven't spoken to them for a good couple of months now. But they were amazing. The other group, with relation to bereavement for families, parents, is the Compassionate Friends, which is a website. They've been amazing, and I am part of their social media group. All children, parents and grandparents that have lost their children or grandchildren, and they do walks around the country and other things, worldwide candle lighting. So it's nice to know. It's a club that you probably no one would ever want to be part of, but there is support out there.
Yeah. Well, that sounds amazing support in terms of the people who have been through similar. Everyone's different, but similar, sharing those experiences, and you, I guess, feel that they can understand some of your pain more than most other people. And did you get any additional support, counselling, therapy, that kind of additional support or help?
So Victim Support did offer me some bereavement counselling, which was useful. I think that was quite early on too, within months. And then further down the line, I've accessed through NHS trauma therapy.
Yeah, because it's trauma.
Is trauma, yeah.
I mean, this is what I've sort of come to understand about my situation with cancer. It's a traumatic event. The diagnosis, the actual treatment, lots of things around it, and it's really important, whatever the experience, to recognise that there is trauma. Okay, so what about social media? I think we all know that it can be good and bad. In your situation, how did you use social media? Was it helpful? Would you advise people staying away from it, or putting more information out there?
I think you summed it up, Charlie, really well. It can be good and it can be bad. I'm not a person on social media generally anyway, but I did access it, and then I did find it useful in some of the sort of positive affirmations that sort of come into your news feed, or Donna Ashworth poems about grief and loss of people. I found, just listening to her words, I found very comforting. So overall, it was generally a positive experience looking at social media.
And did you put out information about what had happened? Did you find people were finding out elsewhere and then messaging you, or?
No, I did. Initially, I just put a picture up of Luke, and at that point, it obviously it was news, and people were commenting, and actually part of that was very comforting. Actually, just seeing the condolences coming in, and just the mass of loss of not just our family, just the people, his peers and his neighbours of the village that he's lived in for 18 years. So that was comforting and reassuring and very supportive for our family, which we needed.
That's well, interesting to hear as well, because I guess some people would think, I'm going to stay away from social media or putting stuff out there, and others will put it out there and find a comfort. I mean, obviously it's very different, but in my case with my cancer, very early on, I posted about my diagnosis and what was happening, and it surprised me how much it helped me. As in, I'd put something up there and I'd get fantastic response, and it was really helpful. One thing I would say is there were also some comments that weren't particularly helpful, and you sort of had to remind yourself that they don't mean anything by this. It's well-meaning, but there were things that were said that really annoyed me. Were there any examples of that in your situation, or was it more all everything was comforting, or did you find people were not messaging that you thought would, or anything around that? Because it can be difficult for other people as well to, well, what do I say?
I think I don't recall many. There were a couple of niggles. I find, and this is quite a positive affirmation, and I would be saying this is, you are strong. You're so strong, and I would probably potentially say that. But now I think you have no option to be strong. You still you don't see sort of day to day dealing with it, and I'm not strong. I'm just getting on with it, as you said about the funeral. I'm just dealing with it. So I've probably got that. You are strong is. I struggle with that one now.
In what sense? Because you don't feel you are strong?
Yeah,
or?
probably.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, but
that's interesting.
But there is. I'm not strong. I'm just having to deal with it.
Yeah, and I think there's many examples where, because people can't imagine what it's like, they assume that they wouldn't be able to cope with it, and you're coping with it, as in you're dealing with the situation, therefore you must be strong. But I think the reality is pretty much everyone will deal with it because they have to. They have no choice. I can understand that, but obviously it's a compliment.
Yes, it is, yeah.
I mean, I found stuff where people were going, "You're strong, you'll beat this," and you're thinking, "Well, how do you know?" Or you've got this. You'll get through it, and how do you know? And one thing that I guess it's again an interesting one. There'd be comments about, "I'm praying for you." Now, of course, they're well-meaning comments, and for someone who's religious, that's a natural thing to say. I'm not religious, and therefore my instinctive kind of reaction to that was, well, why you don't pray for me to get better in that sense? Can you ask him why I've got this in the first place? Or I guess in your place, why has this happened? And I think there's, people will always be well-meaning, 99% of the time. And it's just trying to understand, perhaps in that situation, is that the right thing to say, or could there be better things to say, and giving it a bit more thought. And that comes down to, a lot of the time, just having a bit more understanding of the situation. So you said that generally it was all good, well-meaning, comforting, helpful. Okay, well, good. I mean, that's a real positive. And you still use social media now, because I've seen posts
I do. And during the trial I was given, I think another reason why I used it was to continue to say thank you rather than sending texts to individuals during the trial. I know there was a lot of support coming in to support the family, and so I used it again to just update them on the trial that was going on and just for their continued support. And I think that's a nice way. I did find it a positive thing. I still do put things out there now, probably in a slightly different sense, not to get sympathy, but just to mention Luke's name and just to keep his memory alive, so to speak. That's probably why I use it more so much now, to post a memory of him, because a bereaved a mum will always look after their protect their child, and a bereaved mum will always look after their child's memory. And to me, that's more important than anything now. Yeah. To look after, to hear his name, and to be reminded.
Yeah. Okay. I hope you're finding this episode interesting, informative, and beneficial. And if so, please like, comment, subscribe, follow, and keep watching and listening to future episodes. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your colleagues. Also, if you can, go to the livedinsights.com website and fill in an online questionnaire. You'll be helping so many other people understand more about these different topics and issues. So remember, tune in to Lived Insights, the conversation, and the website. Thank you. Okay, and what about yourself in terms of, you mentioned in the early days not being able to eat and just, I imagine you weren't putting your own health, physical or mental health, at the forefront. You were just getting on with things. But did you have a sense that you needed to look after that? That was important as well. And if so, how did you deal with that from a looking after yourself point of view?
Absolutely. I mean, prior to losing Luke, I was probably a strong woman, running marathons, half marathons. I'm not that person anymore. Just getting out of bed was effort, but I'm very a healthy person, and I was conscious of that, being out with nature. So I was, back walking the dog within a week. I remember my neighbour wanting to walk with me, because it was, even opening that door in that first week was quite overwhelming. That was my safety net in my home. Nothing was going to happen. So walking the dog in that first week was just huge, absolutely huge. But I was back in it. And I remember the lady from Victim Support, she was asking, well, have you had a shower today? And I was like, yeah, I've had a shower. But she said, some people don't have a shower for weeks or months. And have you been to your local shop to go shopping? I was like, yeah, I have. But again, it's normal to not do that for many weeks or months after. So, but I knew it was important for me to look after myself, to get fresh air and to be out in the open. So, I was out walking, not running marathons, and I'm still not, but that'll be work in progress.
So maybe in the future you'll better.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I'm a massive advocate of the outdoors, health, fitness, etc. And in my case, it was, I think, really helped me deal with the situation with the cancer and recovery, etc. And everyone's different, but I mean, it's good to hear that you did get out early. You didn't stay away, shut yourself away, because the longer that happens, the harder it is to then get back out. Was there anything else you did in terms of just looking after yourself? I mean, did you recognise that you had to do things that were going to be helpful for yourself? Because as you sort of mentioned or alluded to, it is so easy just to either stop eating or eat bad stuff, start drinking, not exercising, becoming reclusive, all the things that you could understand, but aren't going to be helpful.
On the back of the trauma and PTSD, I struggled with anxiety and just so it was trying to maintain my breathing, and mindfulness I found helped that. Just when my heart started beating faster, just panic attacks. I was struggling with panic attacks. So
Would they come out of the blue, or could you?
Just out of the blue. The first time I drove the car, I was thinking a car was going to come and crash into me. Everything was making me panic.
Okay.
So I was the GPs and the counsellor was recommending about the deep breathing and grounding myself, which were really helpful tools to be told about and to be sort of taught about, and they were helpful in those early days too. But mindfulness yoga...
Had you ever had panic attacks before?
Never, ever.
That's interesting, because,
Never.
again, I know I've mentioned this a couple of times, but I never had anxiety before, never had panic attacks. And after I was diagnosed, there was 3 occasions I remember where I was really struggling to breathe, and it was when I was going to the hospital for more appointments, and I was thinking, is it something physical related to the cancer? And looking back, well, now, but also sort of a few weeks afterwards, I realised they were panic attacks. And it was like, wow, wasn't expecting it. But it just shows you what, a traumatic event, something like what you've been through, and in a different way, the cancer diagnosis, that these things can happen. You're just not expecting it, and then how you deal with that because you're not expecting it. So have they subsided? Were they just for a period of time?
I think they have. Yeah, I don't think I've had an attack since in the last couple of months for sure. But that first year and a half, they were scary actually, because as you said, I've never had them before, and it was just like, what? This must be a panic attack afterwards. But that side of things has improved together with my anxiety. It's definitely, if there's a loud bang or you can feel tension. I was out actually with friends the other day and in the town, and I'm conscious of just people. I do struggle with people around, a lot of people around at the moment. But.
And in terms of the emotions you were going through, and you talk about panic attacks, but presumably there's a whole range of different emotions, from anger, you talk about numbness, sadness. Can you explain a bit more about some of those emotions which were the strongest ones that you felt?
I think the biggest emotion by far is just sadness that what has been stolen from Luke. 100%, that's the biggest emotion, just the sadness of what he's missed out. He got killed at 19, and the everything that's been taken away from him will be my biggest sadness. And what's been taken away from his family, our dreams with relation to Luke are gone. And I don't know if I'll ever get my head around that, to be fair. Something that I need to kind of work on. Anger is up there because it's such a senseless act in the way he got killed. It was one of the wrong time at wrong place, and that stays with me. Together with the murder trial, a lot of that creates a lot of anger. I try not to be angry, because what can you do with that emotion? It's not going to help at all, but that's easier said than done. It's easy to be angry. Sadness will probably be the biggest one. Okay.
And in terms of Luke and his, I've never met him, but I've seen some of the pictures, and he was very sporty, outgoing, all those things. I know this because I've seen it fairly recently. In terms of what you do to remember him, personally and as a family, are there specific things you have done, continue to do?
So we did he was really into rugby, very passionate about rugby, and we did a rugby match between his peers and brothers, a charity rugby match back in April, which raised a massive £15,000 for victims support. So that was just huge. Each day I light a candle for him, and I vowed to do that. Luke means the meaning of light, so each night I'll light a little candle for him, which is next to his photo. I've done a little part of the garden, memorial garden. Just these things, just means so much. Just keeping him every day. We'll never make new memories, but I will never forget him. And it's important to me to do the little thing, just like lighting a candle. We eat dinners, eat his favourite dinners. Raise his glass rum and coke, right. Just things like that.
And obviously for you that is really, really important and helpful. I can imagine some people might think, kind of, I don't know how to rephrase this properly, but is that just continuing the anguish, the agony, the anger, the sadness, and to sort of perhaps do less of that? What would you say in reaction to that?
I mean, I'll never just get over Luke. Grief is love turned upside down, and I will never stop loving him, so therefore I'll never stop grieving for him. Part of it is I will accept my life as it is now by lighting a candle. If I don't know. That does make sense. As in, you certainly in the moment you can't imagine a day when you wouldn't do that. No.
And it's important to you. And like we said earlier, everyone's situation is different. And there are arguments to say that you've got your own life, you can't change anything, you can't be doing that every day to that. But for you in your situation, it's helpful, it's comforting, it makes sense, it's a good thing, and you can't imagine not doing that. So, and I think in any situation, people have to find what works for them, what's good for them, what's positive, what's helpful, and also, on the contrary to that, find out what doesn't help, what isn't helpful. And for some people, it might be that they have to sort of let it go to an extent. Okay, and can I ask about his brothers? They were boys, and what's the effect been on them losing their younger sibling?
Yes, I think that has been a very hard journey for them in their mid-20s. Both dealing with it in very different ways. Has it helped? We always say Luke was the glue of our family when he was with us. He was the glue of our family, and it is so apparent in his death. He was the glue in our family, and I feel as though we are all probably gone sort of slightly different ways in dealing with it. I know this is 2 years, and 2 years is still very new, still learning, and still going on a massive journey. But I feel at the moment that we have gone very different ways with our grief, and I obviously, as a mother, I want to try and I support both of them and keep them together. But it's a very different journey for so many different people, and whatever way that looks like it. One of them's gone straight into working like 7 a.m. right through to 11 o'clock at night, which is great. And the other one's just gone straight into football and rugby and exercise and everything as well. So that's a positive.
Yeah. Okay. And can I ask you about your work? As in, it must have had an effect. How was that? How were they supportive? What effect has it had in terms of your work and career in that situation?
Thankfully, so working with the NHS, incredibly so supportive, and my immediate team and manager were just amazing, absolutely, and they even are to this day. The main thing I struggled with, because of the trauma, and it was like a brain trauma, I forgot everything. So I've been in the same role for 15 years, but I took 6 months off work. And when I came back, I'd almost as though forgotten a lot of it, and I had to relearn my old role, which I did find really frustrating. And just tiring, even on a computer, writing up notes afterwards, everything was taking so much longer. And even to this day, I'm definitely taking extra half a day to do my tasks. Probably it is hard, but I'm really grateful and thankful for work. That is another thing that has focused me.
Yeah, I guess it takes your mind off the situation, gives you something to focus on, a different purpose, fulfillment, etc., which is really, really important. So, okay, that, I think for anybody going through a bereavement, focusing on things not necessarily they enjoy, but that they can have some structure, some routine, and that purpose and fulfillment is so important. When you talked about going back to sort of how you looked after yourself, the outdoors, you did a lot less in terms of the running and the exercise, but you were still being reasonably healthy. Did you ever feel temptation or sort of almost a magnet towards alcohol or more damaging, negative things, which are so easy and people go to as a way of coping? That coping mechanism. There's good ones and bad ones. So did you ever find yourself going down that route?
I did have I'm not a big drinker or anything like that, not a smoker, but I did start having a couple of drinks in the early days, but I actually found it didn't help me. I know it might help some people, but no, I actually found it made me more depressed and more sad and more emotional. So I actually then gave up for a good while. I'm definitely more a social drinker. That I didn't find that helpful to me anyway.
Okay, yeah. I just think it's very easy and understandable that people do go down that route, and then the further they go down, the harder it is to get back. So, okay, that's good. I touched upon this earlier in terms of my situation, but are you religious? Do you have faith? Did that help? Has that been a good thing?
And as you said earlier, you kind of do question when these traumas, these things are thrown at you, you do question it. I was brought up as a Church of England school, Brownies guide through the church. The children went to church groups, and we as a family used to visit the church, special times of year. So there is the Christian aspect of that. But I think when you are thrown into a situation, you do question your beliefs. So that's kind of work in progress at the moment. I'm trying to work out spiritually. I'm trying to rework.
Okay, that's interesting, because as I said, I'm not religious and I never have been, but I can also appreciate how it could be very comforting. And actually, in situations, whether it's the cancer, bereavement, other situations, I've got perhaps more of an appreciation of how beneficial that could be in those circumstances, and almost a little bit jealous of some people who have faith because it can be, offer that comfort. But you've said that actually it's a work in progress at the moment. Because there must questions and why and
exactly that. And I go to church. And I do find it very peaceful, and obviously Luke's at the village church, so it is peaceful and it is a place where I will take that comfort. But with regards to my beliefs at the moment, it's sort of I've just got to work it out again.
Yeah. Okay. Now, if you were to go through the same situation again, what would you do differently? Is there anything you would do differently, do you think, now looking back in hindsight on the situation? I mean, you did mention about the funeral side, but is there anything else, or is there anything particular around the funeral?
No, as I said, it would be the finer details of the funeral. I was probably not quite in the headspace to make the right choices, but it was all. No one would know that. The people that turned up thought it was absolutely fantastic. But as a mum, I feel that I would have done different things there in hindsight. But to arrange a funeral 4 weeks after your son had been murdered was quite a hard task. So I'll give myself some slack on that one. No, I do feel, people had said in the early days to not, just take time, you'll be exhausted, and not to not to make arrangements or plan things. And I was very good, and even to this day I still don't like booking things, because I'm very much, I'm going to see how I am on the day, because I will still have lower days. And I think that's important, not to put too much pressure on yourself in those early days to sort of, I was lucky with my work. I didn't have to go back to work, and appreciate some people would have to go back quite quickly, which would be so hard.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right, as in everyone's situation is different, and if you have no choice but to go back to work, or if your financial situation meant that there was all the additional pressures, and there could be other factors involved that can make things so difficult. But then you've mentioned the practical support, and I think that's really important to focus on, as in what can people do to practically help. And social media, writing something nice is comforting, but having meals cooked for you in that situation, very practical, very helpful, as well as obviously well-meaning and supportive. And I think for people watching, listening to this, if they have a friend or someone they know close to them who's going through something, whether it's a bereavement or some sort of health issue or something where they want to help but they're not sure what to do, then really think about the practical things. I had, going back to my situation, I had lots of great support, really thankful for, but some of the practical things, I got a gift voucher or gift card for I think it's Cook, the place you can get the nice meals, and they may not even known about this, but but the fact that I was not going to be able to eat properly for a long time, or maybe not be able to eat at all, and before my treatment started, to actually have some nice meals there without having to go and cook and everything else was really, really helpful. And looking at the practical things they can do, you sort of talked about, you had a dog, people helping walk the dog or stuff like that. So, it's not really a question, but were there other things in your situation where either people did do or you think that people could have done to practically help and support you?
So, the practical help was amazing. And I just think just being there, not fixing. Bereavement isn't fixable. And just allowing that person time. And I know I probably did shut out the world to start off with. But I knew I had a lot of friends there that when I opened that door, that they would be there when I was ready. So I think no pressure to get up, no pressure to get showered and get ready, and just like, no, that's fine. It's okay to not be okay.
I think that's really, really important. And I think, I've read your questionnaire. So obviously with the Livedinsights, on the website, people can fill in an online questionnaire to share their experiences. And one thing that I thought was really sort of interesting and something that people should be aware of, particularly men, you mentioned your partner didn't try to fix you, as in he was just supportive. And I think for most men, their instinct is to try and fix things, try to find a solution, try and fix that problem. And often that's not what's needed. So do you want to just expand on that a little bit?
Absolutely. It's not fixable, and just that time. And there is no timeline. There is the saying, time is a healer. I think, me personally, with child bereavement, time isn't a healer. It may get easier as time moves on, but at the moment, time isn't a healer. It hurts sometimes now more than it did 2 years ago, because his laugh sounds so far away now, and some memories are fading. The smelly trainers, the smell's gone, things like that. So I believe that it's not fixable. There is no expiry to it. So just being with that person, holding holding that person's hand, their heart, is the most important or the most helpful thing you can do for that person.
Okay. And you mentioned, obviously, it's been over 2 years. And in terms of grief, in terms of getting over things, I mean, you can't get over it, but you mentioned that it can be even harder now than it was a year or two ago. For somebody trying to understand that, it's almost like, well, surely it must get easier, surely it must get better in some ways, but that's not the reality you found so far anyway.
So far I haven't, but hope will give me a 4-letter word. I will never give up hope that I will, I personally, I'm here as a vessel, but I feel as though I died. I definitely died. That's part of the bereavement, is that person, me, Carolyn, died with Luke 2 years ago, and it's kind of rebuilding, and I will never give up hope of rebuilding a person, my new Carolyn, and my new boys. So I think hope will be the way forward.
And is there, I mean, you said the overriding emotion, sadness. You also talked about the memories, how comforting it is when people post stuff, and those, I guess, events that people talking about Luke, and how important that is. And it seems to me, as someone who's not been through anything like this at all, the grieving process, it's almost where the overriding emotion is more of looking back of love, fondness, happy memories, rather than sadness. That's where you sort of
the tip of the scale tips.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely, and that is my hope, that more times than less times I will look back at Luke with laughter, because he was one crazy, funny, happy boy. At the moment, still 2 years on, and I do think, God, 2 years does seem a long time, but my reality is the mention of Luke's name, it just still comes a lot of sadness. But I've had moments, I have had glimmers. I say glimmers instead of triggers now. I've had glimmers of the happy, when Luke's name's mentioned now, of smiling and remembering the good times, as opposed to just constantly being sad, bereft.
Okay. Because the last question on the online questionnaire is basically, are there any positives from what you've been through? Are there any things you can take out? Because I'm almost a big believer in trying to take the positives out of any situation. Yeah. Have you found any positives at all yet, or not?
Not significantly, but only when I answered that question, I just thought that just cherish what you've got, what we've got, because you never know, with obviously bereavement, that last time you speak to that person, or that last time, like, life can change. So many people change, their lives can change in that split second, and then just cherish the life we have. Even though I used to say to my friend, my life was boring, just mundane, but I'll take that any day now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I think that it's so easy just to take things for granted, to moan about all sorts of stuff that you need. I know people need reminding that how precious life is. Absolutely. And how short it is, and you just never know what can happen, either to yourself or to people you care about, and potentially in time, and perhaps already you've realised that, and therefore perhaps doing more with your own life, and not getting annoyed about the small things as much, and all of that. So I also can kind of understand how it is still very early days. So in time it will be interesting. I mean, it'd be great to have a conversation in another couple of years' time and see if there have been any changes, because bereavement, it's a bit like with cancer, where the closer it is to that the diagnosis, closer it is to the death, it's almost, you expect that to be the hardest point, but actually it can be years later, it still continues and still carries on, and it'd be interesting to find out more about what changes in that time. Now, in terms of your advice to anyone else, if you had a best friend, God forbid, that went through something similar with what you've been through with the last couple of years or so, everything, what would you say? What would you do? What would you advise that person?
To be kind to themselves, to give them, to just allow themselves time to feel that emotion, go with whatever. And it's not an emotional specific day. Your emotions are changing every almost hour to the day to initially. So just allow yourself to manage that emotion at that time, and just to be kind. And it's okay to not be okay. It's okay if you want to just hide in your bed, in that initial early days. That's okay.
Okay. I mean, you also talked about how you had no choice but to deal with it.
Yeah.
And again, I keep going back to the cancer. That's the main thing that I can try to resonate in some way. And question that I answered myself and has come top in the question I asked other people is, what one word would you describe what you've been through? And the answer was surreal, because at the time, going through everything, you just have no choice but to carry on, deal with it, get through it. You don't know how you're doing it, but you're getting through it, and you look back and you can't believe what you've been through. And I suspect there's a similar kind of it's surreal. It doesn't feel real. How did I get through that, or am I getting through that with such a traumatic event, particularly in your situation where the circumstances of Luke's death? Surreal. Do you resonate with that?
I'd sum up with that. Surreal, unreal. Are they the same thing?
I guess, yeah.
I guess definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, as I said originally as well about being an outer body watching a film, it was as though the last 2 years I've just watched another family or a film about a murder and a murder trial, and I haven't been part of it, apart from when you are reminded on the anniversary and things like that. I do get thrown back into that moment, but generally speaking, it all feels surreal. So that is a good word.
Yeah. And I think that's something that people, if they do find themselves in a situation, whatever it might be, you're going to get through it. Yeah. It's going to be horrendous, difficult, tough, all those things, but you'll get through it. So just keep at it. There are lots of things you can do which will help that situation, and there's lots of things friends, family, colleagues can do to help that situation with their support. And to the contrary, lots of things that aren't so good and aren't helpful, and it's trying to navigate your way through that. But given what you have been through, the way you've talked today, I won't say it, you're a strong woman, but it's remarkable. Thank you so much for giving your insights into this topic. I just want to say thank you, and I hope that I'm sure it is going to be beneficial for other people. And the whole point really is, yes, it will be helpful, no doubt, for people going through something similar, but it's the family members, the partners, the friends, the colleagues, to get that little bit more knowledge, understanding, those insights, so they can offer the support which will be so helpful. I talked about the support with my cancer, you talked about the support in your situation, and it helps so much, but it can be better. Mm-hmm. And unless people have that understanding and the insights from people like yourself, then that's going to be harder. So I just want to say massive thank you. Hopefully you'll go and do those marathons or events, continue to raise awareness of the charities, it's victim support.
Victim support, and the Compassionate Friends have also a fantastic charity too.
Okay. Well, I think I just want to say thank you so much. I hope that was okay. So thanks, Carolyn.
Thank you, Charlie.